There we go. Hello, folks. How's it going? It's great to see you. I know we're just coming off of a conversation with Paul Navarro, talking about legal issues. And now we're going to be talking with Paul Tran about business issues and franchising and all the experiences that he's had. So let me go ahead and open up the chat for you guys so you're able to chat with us. But uh, who here has ever thought about selling their company? Go ahead, let us know in the chat if you've ever thought about selling your company. And it should be everyone because we literally just got off a conversation about selling our companies. But today I'm with Paul Tran, who is an eminent entrepreneur, advisor, and operator in the franchise and restaurant space with a career spanning everything from mom and pop shops to multinational expansions. Paul has built a reputation for turning bold ideas into thriving businesses. And Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but over the years you have sold 1,000 franchises. Is that correct? That's the stat that I'm seeing. Look at that.
Yeah. Yeah, we're actually close to 2000 at this point.
Holy
And
crap.
it was across multiple brands and yeah, all of them restaurants.
Wow. And so Paul's here to share his experience and entrepreneurial journey with all of you founders. I know, crazy. And he's based in Orange County. He shares his life with his wife, two kids, and dogs, and he's always down for an adventure and never short on a dad joke. So I'm excited for this conversation. Paul, I'll let you take it from here.
Well, thank you for the kind introduction. And I want to give context that, yes, I've worn many different hats, and it's not because I'm brilliant or anything. I'm not trying to be humble either. It's just I'm ADHD and I just have to tinker in all sorts of things. And I feel like tinkering in all sorts of things actually help inform each other because I think breakthroughs and ideas always come at the intersections, right? So yeah, I just can't sit still. That's the main reason why. It's not because I'm like a polymath or anything. But thank you for having me, guys. I hope that there is an opportunity for me to be of service. I love what Ace NextGen is doing because they're enabling and encouraging all the future leaders. And I don't, I feel like I haven't been like crazy successful by my standards, but I feel like I've taken a couple steps ahead of maybe a lot of folks who are just starting out. And so if I can help with a couple steps ahead of you, then my work here is complete. So um, I just saw when does a dad joke become a dad joke when the punchline becomes apparent? That's
Terrible,
pretty good.
terrible. I love
Um,
it.
if it's okay with you, I kind of have a presentation that I put together. If you don't mind me sharing the screen.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'd love to have you share. I'm gonna go and give you access to sharing
cool.
screen as Trevor sends more dad jokes. Oh, you should have share screen capabilities.
Okay, cool, cool. Thank you. And I just got to make sure my browser's on the right thing.
There you go. No, you're totally good.
All right.
Also Dale Ting is in the chat. And Brian. We have a lot of dad joke aficionados in this conversation. So you're in good hands here.
I'm in good hands. Thank you guys. I'm stealing all of them and uh, making sure my kids cringe. But let's see here. Do you see my screen yet?
Yes, we can see it.
Oh, whoops. Okay, cool. So I was trying to figure out the best name for a talk, and I asked ChatGPT for something that's unconventional, that's controversial, that hopefully is like a change of scenery from the typical talks. And ChatGPT came up with 99% of restaurant and franchise advice is wrong, and here's the 1% that isn't. And I liked it a lot because I do believe that franchising is a very either mysterious industry or it's actually riddled with a lot of horrible case studies where franchising actually, there's a lot of case studies and bad actors that erode the trust of the franchise space. And so I wanted to kind of go over a couple of advice that I hear that it gets touted. People pay thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to receive this kind of advice, and they set themselves up for failure. So I just wanted to kind of at least start the talk with advice that you might have heard and either debunk them or give more helpful context. So that is pretty much the name of the talk. And just a little bit of background. I want to keep this under 60 seconds because if you are interested in learning more about me, you can visit my socials. But this talk is more about you guys and being able to share any actionable insights that might help remove bottlenecks and move you guys forward in any way. So I've been in the restaurant and the franchise space for 20 years. Actually, I started in 2005, so it's exactly 20 years. I have worn many different hats, like I mentioned to Adeel early on. It's not because I am brilliant in any shape or form. I just can't sit still, and I have to tinker in all sorts of things. And so I've created my own restaurant concept. I've also been part of a franchisor organization that ended up spanning all around the world and opened thousands of locations. I've also been a multi-unit franchisee as well. So for the past, since 2014, if you guys are familiar with the Halal Guys, the famous New York street food cart concept. I actually was consulting for them for a couple years, and then in consulting for them, I loved them so much, I ended up becoming a franchisee, bought the rights to SoCal. We built up to 11 locations, lost two in the pandemic, and eventually got acquired by a hospitality company. But my endeavor there was doing about $20 million a year in annual sales. I've also been an investor in a few concepts, and also I currently advise and consult for restaurant brands as well. Like I mentioned, I have sold my Halal Guys holdings. My very first restaurant I also created and sold after 3 years. I think also notable is that I've closed four restaurants, and I feel like there's a lot of lessons to be taught there too. And a couple of milestones that I've been fortunate to be part of has been to take brands public, international across the globe, through acquisitions as well. And like I mentioned to Adeel earlier on, I've sold close to 2,000 franchises as well. So that is a little bit about me. If guys are interested in learning more, you can check out my website. But the agenda for this talk today was is twofold. I want to be able to chat about bad advice or advice that's completely taken out of context or not helpful at all, in hopes that you can avoid mistakes uh, and put them in the right light so that you can actually make them actionable and successful for yourself. The second thing is in 2025, after all the insights and experience and mistakes and wins I've had, if I were to wipe the slate clean, how would I start a successful franchise company from scratch in 2025? I'm pretty sure a lot of startup entrepreneurs are familiar with zero-based budgeting, where you wipe the slate clean, you don't have any ego, sunk costs, traditions, and stories that don't serve you any longer in light of the current reality of the situation, and what would that look like? And so I thought that was pretty important for the agenda. So let's get into it. Of course, after that, I want to keep the talk short so that I can leave it open for questions and answers as well. So let's get to it. The first piece of bad advice that I've heard in the industry, in either restaurants or franchising, is that debt is cheaper than equity. And it's not necessarily false advice, but it's out of context and it's unrealistic. Of course, if anybody had it their way, of course they would get a loan. Of course, they would eventually be able to pay off their loan. Eventually, they'd be able to own 100% of their company. But when it comes to meaningful companies, when it comes to growing, and when it comes to scaling, that's just not realistic. As for myself, even though I built 11 locations for the Halal Guys, uh, I couldn't even get a loan until store number nine. Uh, as when I first started my concept, in 2005, I started like a seafood restaurant. It was pretty much, if you guys are familiar with like boiling crab, it was kind of like this Cajun crawfish boil concept. When pitching that to banks, the banks just laughed and said, "No, we're not taking a risk on that." And so that was just not unrealistic. I ended up having to use student loans for my for my last year of college in order to fund it. And with the halal guys, even with all of my experience for all the years I've been in the franchise space, they still wouldn't fund me. And so it's just not a bankable opportunity when you first start out. And also, not only that, even if you were able to be lucky enough to get a loan, a lot of times they are, high interest, cash flow constricting loans and you have to service those loans. The beauty of raising capital with investors is that, investors are able to play the long game. They're not expecting like a monthly service of debt, and they are able to kind of be easier on the cash flow. And so today, even if I had all the money in the world and I had access to lines of credit, I'd still actually use investors because there's a lot more value in not just easing the cash flow, but of course, there's also strategic reasons as why, connections, advice, sorts of stuff like that. And uh, the question I get a lot when it comes to this advice is, so how did I actually finance my stores? So when I first started off, I used student loans, so I'm not sure if that's too helpful. It's the whole typical story of maxing out credit cards and borrowing college loans. But for the halal guys, how I did it was I raised a fund of $5 million, and that pretty much was supposed to build out 10 stores, and it equates to about 500,000 per store. A side advice, you definitely want to raise a little bit more than you need, because it's always going to cost a lot more and take a longer time than you always think. And it's easier to have all the money up front in order to properly fund the store, than to run out of money and go back to investors and ask for more money. That ends up being not a very easy thing to do, not a very positive thing to do either. But that's what we did. We raised 500K per store. And in the franchise agreement, when I bought the franchise rights, I needed to own 60% of the company. I needed to actually own majority in order to effectively control the business and run day-to-day operations. And so on paper, I needed to be 60/40 ownership. However, at that equity split, our investors would be taking forever to get their money back. So, it would be super difficult to raise money that way. So what I did was we did a 80/20 preferred accelerated payback, which means that out of the 100% of profits that we would make every quarter, uh, 80% of that would actually go back to investors, so that they can make their money back as soon as possible. We would only get 20%. And the incentives are aligned because the investors get their money ASAP, and and they would feel, it makes them feel it's a more attractive risk. And also for us, we want to return the money as soon as possible so that we can switch over and get our 60% profits as soon as possible. So I think the incentives were aligned there. We also charge the management fee of 5%. Think of it like how property managers manage investors' real estate day to day. Don't have Investors don't have to lift a finger, but all the marketing, operations, the hiring, firing, everything is taken care of by us. And so that's how we structured it. And even though it's not the most ideal, like again, I think debt would have been a better thing on paper. It's just not realistic, and we would have taken forever, or we would have never even got off the ground if we were waiting for perfect conditions. And as startup entrepreneurs, you know that the conditions will never be perfect in order to get started. And so that's how we raise capital. If you have any questions about that, feel free to ask that later on during the AMA session. Happy to get into more of the weeds of that because that tends to be the most popular thing that I talk about. One additional benefit is that we raised money per store. So we actually had a parent company where I would own 100% of that organization, and then we'd have LLCs for each individual store, and the investors would own those individual store LLCs, but they never would actually own the profits from the parent company. And so that kind of created some level of control still, and that wasn't giving away the farm, and that just allowed us to scale without giving away too much. So hope that helps.
Yeah,
Um,
could I ask a question?
yeah.
You'll see me occasionally raise my hand, but
Oh, and
that
please, yeah, please speak because I
yeah.
didn't even see that hand. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you're totally good, dude. Um, on that last slide, right? It was easy to see it all as like, give me, as like as simple, like, oh yeah, this is how it was. How long did it take you to figure that out? Was it just like one day, a journaling session, it all came to you to figure this out? Or is this like more like years of experience and working over and over again to get this uh
Yeah.
to work out?
Yeah, great question. Again, I'm always going to lean back on the fact that I am not brilliant. I'm kind of a dummy, but I actually just picked that up from past clients. So before I ended up becoming a franchisee, I just heard a lot of the beauty of my work in consulting and working for franchise companies is that I get to hear so many case studies. I get to meet people who own like over 100 McDonald's. Actually, that was actually one of my investors too. And I get to meet so many people that have really succeeded and scaled, and also those that have failed. And so, in learning that, I just learned that that was one of the structures that I learned from a client that I consulted for. And I asked, he was actually a large multi-unit franchisee for Subway in Chicago. And I asked, like, how did you do that? Like, if I don't have that much money, how'd you do it? And that's pretty much how he did it. His structure was actually a lot more complex because it actually involved the ownership of real estate too. And it was much more complex, but I took some of that and I pretty much just wanted it to be simple so that I can easily grasp my head around it. And I felt like this is the most simplest and the most interest aligned for investors. So,
Nice.
um, yeah.
Oh, thanks so much
And
for that.
yeah, and my boss, Dan Rowe, CEO, when I worked at FranSmart for 10 years, he always said, if you take really good care of your investors, you'll never have to ask for money again. And so I follow that advice. And after I sold my company, I actually am now a multi-unit franchisee of another brand, Pepper Lunch. And the moment that happened, my investors and they actually asked me what's next. So that's actually really cool. So they've been able to help me fund the first store in a matter of a couple months, and now we're looking for store number two and store number three, and I haven't had to worry as much about money because of the hard work I put in over the last 10 years. So that's another piece of side advice as well. So thanks for bringing that up. That's
Yeah.
important stuff too.
Yeah. And so for the audience, right, this comes out of like hundreds of conversations, probably thousands, right? Like not even hundreds. So
For sure.
thanks for sharing it.
Yeah, and a lot of conversations happen with myself too. So, but that's another story to deal to deal with. But yeah, hope that helps. The second piece of bad advice that I've heard is that just because you can franchise doesn't mean that you should. And when I wrote that, I thought about if any of you are like Jurassic Park fans, I don't know if you remember Jeffrey Goldblum's character. He was like, the scientists were so preoccupied with whether they could that they didn't stop to think about whether they should. And I thought that was kind of cool. I think the advice applies. Um, and today is very different from franchising decades ago. Like back then, decades ago, it was held by a select few elite, entrepreneurs and companies. Like only Subway knew how to franchise, only McDonald's and Burger King and those guys knew how to franchise. It was very coveted, very secretive, mysterious, and also it was very expensive too. But in this day and age, almost any mom and pop with a little bit of saved up capital can actually just hire a franchise attorney to help register their documents and be in business. Most of my career at FranSmart, selling and consulting for franchises, a lot of those brands only had like 1 to 4 units, and they were already like interested in franchising. The playing field has leveled, which is great because it gives access to small mom and pops who should franchise a way to grow, a way to raise capital, and kind of stack up against the big boys. However, leveling the playing field also welcomes bad actors or people who just aren't ready to franchise or they shouldn't be franchising in the first place. And so that's a good thing or a bad thing. And again, it's also an effective way to raise capital, like I mentioned. It's a way for you to pretty much open new locations without having to put out your own capital. You can kind of delegate that to entrepreneurs who have some money and uh, they believe in the mission that you believe in, and they can help you grow to new heights as well. It's also quite lucrative. I mean, if you are a franchise company, for example, Subway doesn't even I mean, you can say what you want about Subway nowadays, like it's kind of like open to interpretation. But back then, Subway never even had one location of their own. They just were really good at selling franchises and selling the systems and selling the dream. And they didn't even have to. open any of their own locations. They just had to invest in support and coaching. And imagine a low capex model like that, where it's just straight up royalties coming in, like thousands of streams of revenue coming in, and not that much money to expend out. That's pretty lucrative, attractive to buyers, going public, private equity, stuff like that. Um, I just mentioned that too, just right now. But again, it just goes back to, yes, just because you can, sometimes entrepreneurs just aren't ready to franchise yet. They don't have all of their systems in place. They don't have their business model firmed up or predictable enough to sell it or to delegate it to other people who are outside of your organization. There's also incompatible DNA too. Meaning, for restaurants, in the case of restaurants, you go from a dynamic of managing a bunch of like high school or college kids in the restaurant. Now you're actually shifting the dynamic to now you're managing and supporting a group of entrepreneurs, which is a totally different dynamic. Entrepreneurs have massive egos. They have their set way of doing things, and it's also become more of there's new legal challenges of doing that too. And so a lot of people just aren't fit, or they realize they're just not, they just like running restaurants. They don't like managing entrepreneurs, or they don't have the slightest idea how to open new markets, manage distribution in the other part of the country. There's just so many nuances that you're either not ready for, or you're just not. That wasn't what you signed up for. Franchising is like the bright, shiny object, and later on you realize like you got into something that you can't unwind. It's really expensive, if not detrimental, to unwind. So, uh, yeah.
Yeah.
And also, it's not like you should just keep to yourself and just open corporate stores or franchising. In my career with consulting, I've also advised clients to consider other gray areas like licensing, capital raising, because even though I say franchising is more affordable nowadays, it's still not cheap. I mean, you should probably be budgeting about upwards of $100,000 to get a lawyer, register your documents with the FTC, and build the support team, advertising collateral in order to be a franchise of substance. But for brands that are unsure about whether they want to franchise, sometimes it's a good fit for me to tell them you should probably talk to an attorney about licensing. Whereas franchising probably costs of anywhere upwards of $100,000, you can hire an IP or a license attorney where they can probably put together contracts for like under 10,000. And it allows the mom and pop, or allows the startup, or the restaurant company or franchise to just test the waters with franchising. If they choose one person who could be like kind of like a guinea pig, where you can kind of like give them the business model, and show them how to do something and kind of see what it's like. It's also an opportunity to say like, hey, I actually enjoyed this experience and I would like to commit to becoming a full-fledged franchising. Or you realize later, like, I hate this. I only want to just operate my own stores. You're out only 10,000 versus being out 100,000. And that's a lot more of a public spectacular, like, that just looks bad as well. So that's one way. Another way is capital raising. There's been a lot of brands that I've consulted for where they run incredible restaurants, and they want to stay focused on restaurants, but they do want to grow too. There's also a lot of people on the other hand that they have a ton of money, and they want to invest, but they probably shouldn't be franchisees. They probably should not be stepping foot into a restaurant. They probably will destroy your brand. Another one way to marry that is like, hey, like what do you think about just investing in the corporate entity, or investing in a unit of the corporate entity? Um, just like I mentioned earlier about how I raised capital for my halal guys, you can invest into a revenue generating store, and you would just pay a management fee to the operator, and you pretty much get the cash flow from the business. The operator gets the capital to grow, and they also don't have to touch the IP or the brand as well, and everybody wins too. So there's just alternative ways to approach it, case by case. So I'm glad you guys just came from a legal talk. Maybe that's something to talk to your lawyer about as well.
I wanna add, so
Yeah,
if I could interject here, Paul.
go
Yeah,
for it.
you mentioned a lot about like being ready and having your systems in place. I want to ask about your experience. When did you know you were ready to launch a franchise? Like, what was that conversation like with, I guess, your family or like the folks, the folks at home,
Yeah.
like I'm gonna take this big risk, and what was that process like?
So for context, I've only consulted for restaurant company founders who decided they were ready or they're looking to see if they were ready. I've actually never created my own restaurant chain to franchise. So that's actually a really good question where I actually don't know the full answer. To be honest, at the end of the day, it's personal in nature. It's also circumstantial as well. But when it comes to when a client comes to me and looks to see if they're ready, a lot of times it's more like just trying to talk them out of the deal. I usually just say, hey, like you're probably not going to see. I usually try to unsell it where I'm like, you're probably going to be spending a lot more money than you think you need. And you're probably also going to have strained family relationships as well. Remember, you're probably going to be spending at least 100,000 and maybe another 100,000 more in order to have any meaningful, any meaningful change. I also remind them that most big brands, they actually had to raise money. They actually had outside money, or they needed to have a large runway of like years before they actually can become a large company of substance. That's when I ask if they're ready for all of that. I also ask if the store or the concept itself, as new or small as is it currently profitable? Like without growing, without being a popular brand because it's hard to compete and get attention, without all of that, are you still making money? Because you having a celebrity endorse your store and have it go viral, super rare event. You being the hot brand on the block forever, impossible. So without all that stuff, without a large marketing budget, like are you still profitable as well? Um, and uh, and 90% of the time, they're not ready to franchise. And I actually tell them you should probably explore opening another location and treating it like a franchise. You should probably entertain a licensing deal if that license partner is actually like really sophisticated. They're not too difficult to like manage. They're not like a rookie franchise, a rookie entrepreneur, and just see what it's like first. It's the whole try before you buy thing. I think most people just get right into it because they are impatient. They feel FOMO or something that they just start throwing money at a prom, and it's kind of hard to unwind the consequences. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so for the audience at home, that means tomorrow during office hours, Paul will be talking you all out of your businesses, but the ones that survive are the ones that are gonna thrive, is what I feel like is gonna happen.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully, yeah, happy to chat about that a little more granularly. But those are a few things that do come to mind when it comes to readiness. I usually talk them out of it. I usually talk the other alternative means as well. Most of the time, they're like, "I didn't even think about that," or "I hadn't considered that." Or to be honest, even though I say debt is the whole bad advice about equity, sometimes they didn't realize that like they actually have access to lines of credit and they can actually grow without giving away more of their company. So, I mean, there's just so many things to consider. A lot of folks are just they come in with a certain story, and if you don't have an ego, and if you're able to like consider new information that makes your interest irrelevant or redirects it, then you have a fighting chance to be ready. So, yeah,
Awesome. Thanks so much.
no, of course. Um, let's see here. Again, I just talked about scarcity and FOMO as well. I mean, a lot of times brands want to grow because they feel like they need to grow fast, or competition is going to like overtake them, or whatever the mindset is. There's a flip side. I mean, there's a lot of I also if you guys have read the book Rework, um, Rework is one of my favorite, like it's my top five, and it talks about approaching business in a way that doesn't really follow the herd. And one of those things is some of my favorite restaurant chains, some of my favorite franchises, they actually aren't even popular, or they aren't even like, they don't even have like 1,000 stores. However, they are much more profitable and they've been around for decades and they fly under the radar. And I usually tell one of the chapters in that book is called um, staying small or whatever the chapter is. But the thing is, why is everybody trying to focus on trying to be the big, most popular, most high sales company? Sometimes being small isn't really a stepping stone. Sometimes it can be a great destination in itself. Like if your concept is special enough, like and unique enough and hard to duplicate, you can take your time. Like for example, In-N-Out Burger, which is the best burger out there. You can fight me about it, but they didn't grow as fast as other brands, but they grow slowly, steadily, surely. They always make sure that there's always more demand than supply, and they are more profitable than other brands that are like maybe 10 times their size. So I believe that, one piece of advice is like you can't be the best. You have to be different. And if you're different enough and you're hard to duplicate enough and you're special enough and you focus on the right things, like for example, making sure franchisees are super profitable and they're successful, that's a much more profitable KPI for me. So, and I'm sure I'll touch on it as we move along, but just thought I'd share that as well. The third one is kind of like a bridge of what I mentioned earlier. Brand popularity does not equal brand profitability. A lot of times, there's a lot of celebrity endorsements of course, they have different interests, and they also get paid differently. And so it just means if a brand is fortunate enough to have like be popular, then I hope they take advantage of it and they use that to build the best organization possible and all that. But that seldom means that you are good at business. That seldom means that you actually have a profitable business model. It typically means that you're just really good at marketing. Marketing is one part of the equation, but it's not the main thing. Um, it's also temporary and unsustainable too. Like I mentioned, we are in a day and age where something is popular for like 5 minutes and then you're gone. I hope that your business model is only not only riding on popularity, but it actually has substance and can last for a long time. And I like to say, like, I hope, your brand. I'm more interested in brands that last forever or last for a long time, not for a good time. Um, and it cuts both ways as well. Brand awareness is talked about, and brand awareness is something to aspire to, but there's also an equal amount of brands that actually are really popular and grow really fast. Uh, what I've noticed in most of them is that yeah, they're sexy and they're on the cover like one year, but like in 3 to 4 years, I always see them back on the same magazine covers, uh, closing down, getting lawsuits, laying off people, having like all sorts of legal issues as well. So just know that the growth is maybe spectacular, but so are all the failures. And the most popular, I won't say the name of the brand, but the most popular, really well-known brand, based on a bunch of like statistics and surveys, actually just closed 4,000 locations in the last 3 years. So popularity cuts both ways. It also encourages short-term decisions as well. If you're just focused on being the most popular brand or always getting on the news, you're going to focus on the wrong things like top line sales, which is not a bad thing. But if you're just focused on top line sales and no bottom line, that's not good. There's a lot of restaurant chains who they do like $5 million a store, but holy cow, they have like 50 people in the store. I like to focus more on revenue per employee than the revenues of the store where they're not taking home anything. I also believe in KPI, like, it's more important than the number of stores is the numbers in the stores. Like, is the economics profitable, and will be there for a long time instead of being a low margin business. There's just a lot of KPIs that get focused on. If you're just focused on popularity, the KPIs are different. And I just noticed your hand up, Adeel. You have a question?
Yeah. There's a ton of questions in the chat, but I'm
Oh,
gonna be
I'm
selfish
so
and
sorry. I'm
ask.
not good at
No.
managing all
You're
this
good.
stuff.
You're good.
Apologies.
I've got them.
Okay.
While we're, before we get to those, I want to ask, so in the accelerator program, the number one issue that entrepreneurs have or small business owners have is attracting customers, new customers, more customers, whatever your metric is. And I feel like in this day and age, you were mentioning like becoming TikTok famous viral, like feels like the easy solution. We see everybody going viral, and then we're like, yeah, that, I want that to be me. I want Ace Next Gen to go viral and get 1 million followers and all this kind of stuff. And you're advocating to not go that route because it encourages those short-term decisions. It's temporary and unsustainable. What's the alternative then, right? Like we're in a TikTok world, man. Like it's kind of hard to argue against it.
That's a great question. And yes, like most things, it needs a little more context. For example, um, there's a lot of content creators that create content that goes viral, but it actually doesn't convert. And um, one example is like, yeah, you can do all these dances and all these silly memes, but then they don't effectively create that content to where it actually has a call to action that's effective. So that's one thing that comes to mind. Another thing is that like content creators have different incentives than the business owner. Content creators have a goal of uh, going viral and having millions of followers, or like advertising companies. I hope you find a good advertising company that can help you convert to customers, but their interests are misaligned too. Like they're trying to get an award. Like they're trying to get like different type of metrics and most times they actually don't mean profitability for you. Um, Another thing is like uh, in restaurants, when you're trying to do marketing, a lot of restaurants try to hire like those big influencers that have like 100,000 followers and all that. That's a horrible way to approach it because number one, those folks, they are probably going to charge an arm and a leg to do posting, right? Another thing is because they're like globally famous, like most of their customers won't even be customers that are ideal to your store. They're like irrelevant. My best advice for those folks is to find micro influencers who are just growing or they are local to your business, where like a majority of their followers are actually in your town. And they probably won't charge because they're trying to grow their account. They're trying to get content. And I feel like their content that they create is going to be a lot more actionable and they're going to be a lot easier to work with. I don't know if that answers your question directly, but I just like there's just so much
That,
more than just I
that
need
makes
a viral following.
that makes so much freaking sense, right? Like, and it's good to hear you say that. Like, right? Like, who gives a shit if there's sorry, pardon my French, if there's 1 million followers, right? Like, what percentage of those are going to be in your specific area, right? Like that makes so much sense to me. So thanks for sharing that insight.
Oh, I learned the hard way, and I spent a ton of money on the wrong marketing. And also, I stole that from Gary Vee as well. Gary Vee talks about like micro influencers is the way to go, and that makes total sense as well. They're willing to do it for free, and their interests are aligned as well. Like we're a small business, they're a small creator. They have every incentive to help make sure you succeed, and they look good that way too. So anyway, yeah, I hope that helps.
Nice. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Of course, of course. Again, we just talked about wrong KPIs as well. And then the pressures of growing too fast, too soon. There's no shortage of case studies where, brands get a ton of money. They just grow recklessly. They take all, like, they grow and they get all the news attention. And then a couple years later, you're hearing that they're closing stores and stuff like that. It happens all too often. Again, I'd rather stay small, keep demand outpacing supply, and I'd rather grow steadily and last forever versus just be a flash in the pan. So, yeah, uh, I touched on it here and there, but you can't be the best and you can't cater to everyone. You have to be different. You have to be okay with not pleasing everybody. I feel like the long tail has enough customers, especially hardcore customers, that are willing to support your business and be successful. Um, Again, I'd rather be profitable for a long time, and sometimes that does require staying small. I've actually been a part of quite a few transactions where these small restaurant chains, they only have like 10, 20 stores, not even 100 stores, and they've already gone public on the stock exchange or they've already been acquired through private equity. Um, and you'll never hear about them because they're not dramatic enough to be on Entrepreneur or Fast Company, but they happen more often than not. And I'd rather play the odds that I'm probably never going to be the next Chick-fil-A or Shake Shack. I need to play the game that I can win. So that's reality. And most importantly, instead of growing fast, just make sure the franchisees that you have recruited are heard. They feel like they are heard, they're valued, and they're successful. Um, I always tell brands that you want to have 1,000 stores, but you don't want to have 1,000 franchise owners to babysit because that's a huge strain on your limited resources. I'd rather you just be strategic at choosing certain franchisees, making sure they're so damn successful. They do the heavy lifting of going on the mountaintops and raving about you. They are willing to raise the money for you and open 20 more stores for you. I'd rather get to 1,000 stores with just like 10 really good franchisees. That's a lot more profitable. It makes your company more valuable, and that's just more sustainable too. You're just more profitable. So yeah. Um, so that's three pieces of bad advice or advice that's out of context. There's a lot more, but we have constraints of time. And if you'd like, feel free to email me. I'm happy to actually share a couple other bad advices that didn't make the cut because I was trying to curate this properly. But the second section is I'll keep this super short because I want to be able to answer some questions. But if I were to start in 2025, wipe the slate clean. A couple things. You've heard me say this multiple times. Franchisees are the most important person in your organization. Your customers shift from customers that dine into your restaurant to now your customer has shifted from that to actually franchisees are now your customer. You take really good care of them. They will come back often. They will rave about you, meaning they will open more stores. They will refer more franchisees for you. That is the lead domino that makes a lot of things a lot easier. So finding really good franchisees are going to be harder, but it's one of those things where it's the hard work that makes things easier later. So another thing is I would build in public as well. Same, we kind of talked about a little bit on creating content, a deal, but I think a lot of restaurant chains and franchise companies, they're really good at creating consumer content, but they don't really do enough for business content. They think that they can just take consumer content and just reskin it for business content. It's not the way it works. I usually tell clients that, if you're using social media to do content, like I do the 10-to-1 strategy where every 10 consumer facing piece of content, I want you to plant a little seed that, hey, did you know that we're franchising? 10 more pieces of content. Oh, by the way, we're growing. Where should we grow? And that actually tends to be the highest engaging content because everyone's like, oh, open here in Dallas, open here in Georgia. It needs to be in my neighborhood. And that doubles as actually engagement and potential franchisees as well. 10 more pieces of content, then you talk about a day in the life of a franchisee or an operator or a manager so that potential franchisees can see themselves as someone that they can actually, hey, I could do that. Maybe I could be a franchisee. So building in public, creating a newsletter as well to just share your journey has actually been super effective at getting a bunch of potential franchisees before you're even ready to franchise. That way, you're not like waiting to franchise and after you're getting approved by the FTC, then you start selling franchises. It's going to take another year or so. If you're able to just share your journey along the way. Some brands that I've consulted for, like the moment they're ready to franchise, they've already had a database of like hundreds of people ready to like talk about franchising. So plant those seeds, build in public is the way to go. Um, Resiliency. I can get into more details on this on office hours, but as you can tell, like down markets, hyper competition, fears of tariffs, COVID, all sorts of things aren't really friendly. They will destroy overly optimized companies. Like if you're optimized for profit, optimized for leanness, that means that you're so thin that you can break whenever external forces that are usually unplanned or underestimated destroy it. So there's a lot of things that resiliency matters, and I can get into more details on that, but that's really important. Record everything. Because we have our phone available to us, one of my best pieces of advice for restaurant chains and franchises is that turn on your phone, record everything you do, even if it sounds silly or trivial, record it. Record how you open and close. Record how you count the money in the cash register. Record what your shelves should look like, what good and cleanliness looks like. Record this and that. Record every single thing, because eventually, when you scale, you're gonna be glad you have all those videos that you can hopefully eventually hire someone to turn them into step-by-step processes. Franchising is all about systems, and if potential franchisees look under the hood and they see systems for everything, that actually makes you a lot more attractive of a franchise sale than not having your stuff together. You don't want to wait until later to do it. So record everything. And also one of my biggest investments that have been asymmetrical in ROI is that I've been able to hire virtual assistants as well. Restaurants tend to be super low margin, and there's 1,000 things that you have to do right consistently every single day. VAs, where they're from outside the country, where and of course minimum wages and all the minimum wages aren't friendly here in the States. It's also hard to find good content, good talent. I've been able to easily source them overseas, where a lot of the VAs can do a lot of the heavy lifting on administrative work. My VAs, they do my accounting, my bookkeeping. They actually communicate to my investors. They actually make sure that my staff is following all labor laws in California. They're also able to like double check like payroll. They do so much that you don't think that they can do over remotely. But if you change your mindset on like everything can be if it can be recorded, it can be turned into a system. That's going to make your organization more profitable. And if you take that administrative work off of your team that's actually in the restaurants, they'd actually be more happier to run the business for you. They can focus on actually serving customers and keeping the store clean and everything that they want to do, but they can't because they're so overwhelmed. VAs has been the bottleneck remover. So I can get into that too, but that's been one of my favorite things that I've invested in. And of course, over index on leadership. More important than the business model is actually the leadership. Uh, for example, Halal Guys, the first brand I got into, they actually started off with as a hot dog cart, and that got no sales. The leadership was able to see the change, or the gap in the opportunity to turn it into a hearty Muslim-friendly meal that served all the Muslim cab drivers in New York City. And because most of these entrepreneurs in the audience here are like maybe tech enabled, tech prone, you'll know that most every large meaningful tech company never started off with the idea that they have now. Like, right? Like Facebook was like some kind of joke website. Google's original name was Backrub. And there's just so many like companies that they didn't start off with, that they needed leadership to actually see the winds of change and pivot and be more relevant to consumers. So more important than the model itself, more important than even like the taste of the food, is the leadership. You've seen a lot of like incredible restaurant chains there where the food tastes like crap, let's be honest, but they are ran by incredible people. So I would have to argue that leadership is more important. So that's pretty much it. I'm so sorry I didn't leave more time that I would like, but I'm gonna leave it to AMA right now.
No,
So Adeel, I'll let you kind of take
you're,
over.
you're totally good, dude. You don't have anything to be sorry about. The chat has been lit. I want, before we get into AMA, can we just get a big thank you in the chat for Paul for sharing his insights? Again, like all of these things came from either one, him making the mistake himself and like learning from it, or two, hundreds to thousands of conversations with other entrepreneurs, franchisees, business owners, customers. Like this is like quality conversation that is very rare to come by. So we really appreciate you, Paul. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, thanks for
Um,
trusting me.
Oh, dude, we're having a great time here. I wanna ask you, throughout your conversation, you talk about keeping a lot of people happy, and one piece of advice is like you that I've heard is you can't make everyone happy, right? You
Yes.
mentioned you have to keep your investors happy, you have to keep your franchisees happy, you have to keep your what's it called? Your customers happy, your wife happy, your kids happy, your mom and dad and your dog and like somebody's got to lose, and it's oftentimes the entrepreneur in those cases.
Yeah.
So what's your piece of advice for those entrepreneurs? Because we do have a community, Asian American entrepreneurs typically are people pleasers, at least in the Ace Next Gen community. Like, how do you
Yeah.
make sure you're taking care of yourself and keeping yourself happy when you're serving so many other people?
Oh my gosh. This is a session on its own. But I believe that practice, do what I say, not what I do. But you do need to keep yourself, like yourself and your unique calling, the happiest. Because like you said, not everyone is going to be happy. And if you keep yourself as your North Star, you are going to attract the investors who are a little bit more understanding and aligned and compassionate. You are going to attract the partners who are going to be the right fit. Um, and it also requires um, yeah, it requires the tough conversations, but it also requires like managed expectations as well. For example, for the halal guys, I actually ended up having 30 investors. That's a lot of investors. But the beauty is we managed expectations early on. We said, hey, this is a minority investment. You're not allowed to say or do anything. As long as we are keeping our promise about giving you monthly reports, and you need to stay out of the way and let us do our thing because you early on you're not investing in the halal guys. You're investing in me. You're investing that you're trusting that I'm doing the right thing. I will do my best to take your advice into consideration, but I need the space to do the right thing for the company. And so because of that, I think our investors actually didn't bother us for like almost 10 years. I mean, questions here and there, but because of that managed expectation and because we did do really well, um, and because like even though we did end up closing 2 stores, we were always pretty transparent about it and we always shared the numbers. And so it, it ended up actually just being a lot easier. So it's just managed expectations is pretty much the main gist of it all. Um, so I don't know if that helps, but
Yeah.
that is one thing that comes to mind.
I wanted to add on, say you didn't manage expectations at the start, and now you're facing that, they're the investors are asking questions and or like giving unsolicited advice, and the franchisees are, putting their 2 cents in, and you didn't set those expectations up front. Have you had that experience where you've had to reset expectations or tell them later on, or what's that process been like?
Yeah. I I haven't really gone through that like to where it's caused a lot of problems or created lawsuits or any of that stuff. I'd like to believe that your life is too short to make all the mistakes yourself. And I've been fortunate to see a lot of case studies from clients and brands and stuff from just my line of work where I'm like, okay, I'm not letting that happen. And I think so many successful people before me or that I've consulted for or that I've sold a franchise to, I've been fortunate to receive a lot of great advice from them too. And it's funny, a lot of the questions do come back to investors and investor relations as well. I think that managed expectations and communicating often tend to be the best way for you to keep investors at bay and investors happy. You know, they say bad news is always better than no news. Uh, like I think investors are, if you choose the right investors, they generally tend to be pretty smart. They tend to also be entrepreneurs as well. They tend to understand you better than even your family does sometimes. You just need to communicate and say, hey, we lost this account, or hey, our supply chain, our commodity, as you can tell from the news, commodities have like shot through the roof. This is what we're dealing with. Like if investors see those updates, they'll be like, I understand, hang in there. They might offer some help, but they'll just stay out of your way because they understand and because you're communicating with them often. I'd say you probably want to talk to them on a monthly basis. And if you keep your promise about communicating with them like the fifth of every month, they'll bother you less. Like if the only time they bother you is when you don't keep your promises. Like if I send my reports every fifth of the month, um, they know not to bother me before then, and they know that they're going to get a lot of their questions or concerns, or their imagination will be like eliminated, and things can continue on. So a lot of times you can control the distraction that way,
And setting a regular cadence for that communication sounds like the key.
for sure,
Um,
for sure.
Two quick questions from the chat. You mentioned one of your top five favorite books. I sent the link rework in the chat, and we had people already making AI summaries of the book and sharing it. What are some other top tier books that you recommend?
Oof. I'd actually argue rework is actually number one. There's
Oh
so many
wow,
incredible lessons in there. Um, I'd say the I'd say the book that changed my life and got me into entrepreneurship would be The 4 Hour Work Week.
nice, nice.
And it pretty much helped me think differently about like all the things that you expect it makes me question everything the status quo. So it didn't just help me like reorganize my life. Yes, it introduced me to virtual assistants. Yes, it helped me draw boundaries and take mini vacations here and there. I use like I took the advice literally, but it also just changed my thinking of like, dude, how can I arbitrage this, or what is the actual asymmetric ROI? Like if I'm doing everything that everyone else is doing, well, I can't expect to like have stellar or extraordinary results. So it's more like approaching each of these books with a mindset of like what is the meta or what is the overarching like mindset that we need to have. So
Nice.
um that's another book that has changed my life as well.
Awesome.
Um yeah.
And
Uh
I wanted to ask a question from Lawrence as well. Lawrence is asking, can we have an Ace Next Gen event at your new Pepper Lunch location at Irvine Spectrum? We gotta get it. We gotta get
Oh
the answers
man.
here.
That's quite specific, but for you, Lawrence, yes. Happy to entertain that for sure.
There you go. That's Lawrence. And then I know we're at time, but do you have time for like one more question?
I'm available for you guys. I just didn't know if there was another session that needed to take place. So I'm
No,
happy to
we
stick around if the audience finds it valuable.
yeah, I would love then if we can do two more questions, I promise we'll be done after that. But Tony is asking, how do you stay resilient in the restaurant business with a rapidly changing economic condition? Tariffs. Yeah, I don't even want to talk about it, honestly. All this stuff going on, but
Um, I guess so to answer your question, hopefully this case study kind of lets you think about resiliency differently. But as I mentioned during the talk, I had 11 halal guy stores and I lost two of them. And I lost two of them, and they actually had the same exact characteristics as to why they failed. So before COVID, um, I think we were able to choose real estate based on crazy density during the daytime because a lot of our did come from lunchtime. And if you're familiar with Southern California, those two locations are downtown LA and West Hollywood. Those two areas are known for incredible daytime traffic. And I thought that the overwhelming amount of daytime traffic could absorb the fact that there's not as much residential traffic. And and with West Hollywood, it was famous for all like the weekend parties, and most of our sales were like made during the nights and weekends where people would just party in West Hollywood. And I think we over-indexed on that, and we kind of like we overestimated those and underestimated just how much more we needed other amounts, more revenue opportunities as well, like residential, catering business, stuff like that. And of course, downtown LA and West Hollywood at the time, the rent was insane. The rents there were like double what I normally would even be comfortable paying with. And I think that rapid growth and also uh, maybe being arrogant kind of got in the way of choosing real estate the way it's supposed to. And I need to diverse like those are examples of over optimizing for daytime traffic or over optimizing for the party traffic. I wish that I would was a little bit more careful and just making sure, hey, if those actually didn't happen, could I still survive off residential? Could I still survive off catering? Could I still survive off third party delivery? I just needed to make sure all the check boxes were checked. And I think we kind of got a little bit too confident. And I think those suffered dearly during COVID. However, during COVID, the other locations that I chose, like Costa Mesa, Tustin, those were extremely profitable during COVID because of third party, because of the stay-at-home mandates where everyone was eating at home and they needed to like go somewhere. And the daytime was still there when things started to like correct itself. But that's what I mean by like resiliency. Like you don't want to over optimize and you don't want to just depend on one revenue stream. For example, there's a lot of franchises out there where sadly, they are really good at marketing, but their business model is not very profitable, and they need to sell franchises in order to sustain themselves. Like their actual units actually aren't as profitable, and they needed to keep selling and keep cutting corners and keep, misleading the sales process. And so that's just what I mean. Like I think you need to figure out how to create multiple revenue streams, and we've been able to you've been able to see what does a recession look like for your business? What does hyper competition look like? Where do you differentiate in order to stand out from the competition? If something as disastrous as COVID happened, how would you respond to that? So it's just more like the Darwinistic like way of just going through all the scenario, or Doctor Strange way of looking at all the scenarios as much as you can is how you would think about resiliency. So hope that helps.
Nice. That's super helpful. And I want to finish off on this question. We've
Sure.
gone through your entire like career path, the tips that you got, the bad advice that you got. I want to ask you if you could go back in time to when you were starting your entrepreneurial journey. Let's say you just read 4 Hour Work Week, and you could give yourself a piece of advice. What would that piece of advice be and why?
Oof. This is controversial for me because I'm like, uh, you don't want to change anything because that's what helps you appreciate and the way things panned out. But I know what you're talking about. I'd say that I'd say that oof. I'd say that you are better together. I think the biggest thing that has helped me is just asking for help. So it's entrepreneurs like to like take pride in like being able to do things on their own and they like to trailblaze. But I'd say the most important two most important pieces of advice is that the biggest life changes have happened when I asked for help, meaning I asked for capital or I asked to partner up or I asked for help running the stores. It's always has to do something about helping, asking for help. And the second thing was to create as much margin as possible. That's why I say earlier, like more important than the number of stores is the numbers in the stores. I also treat that the way for life too. I'd say that most of the most life-changing things that have ever happened in my life have happened because I created enough margin to be curious or to let interruptions happen because those are where outside forces can come in and change things for you. I like to believe some of life is, you can call it luck, divine intervention, or whatever it is, but you need to have a margin in your life and be open to it for it to even take root and blossom into something cool. So I'd say be ask for help and widen your margin. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, that was such an insightful way to finish. And on that note of asking for help, all the entrepreneurs at home, you'll get your chance to get help from Paul, who has graciously offered office hours for tomorrow. So we'll go ahead and send those out 1 hour after this conversation. But Paul, on behalf of the entire Ace Next Gen community, on behalf of Lawrence, who connected us, on behalf of all of the entrepreneurs, we want to say thank you so much for this insightful conversation. I really
Oh,
appreciate it.
oh, thank you for having me. And thank you for trusting me with this. And hopefully there's some actionable, helpful stuff in there. And yeah, thank you again, Adeel. Appreciate you, man. And thank
Awesome.
you, Lawrence.
Awesome. We're looking forward to office hours with you. We'll see you later. Okay.
All right, take care. Bye, everybody. Bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone. See you.